What happens when a former TV news anchor joins the other side and starts a campaign to tell the truth? Well, the left freaks out and does everything it can to shut him up. They swatted him. They condemned him on social media. They did everything they could to silence him. It didn't work.
Your show's a big hit. It's a big success. You do fantastically. Your ratings are great, and we're very proud of you.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
Had an amazing week last week, went up to Dallas, Texas, and had the privilege and honor to be on set with Will Cain on his brand new red hot show on Fox, The Will Cain Show. The guy is even nicer in person than you see him on television. He's very nice on television, but does a very important job. He's grabbing different generations into the news cycle to really educate them and show them lively debate and tell them right from wrong. We got to sit down in his brand new set. Recently, they released this video showing what that new set looks like.
Live from Texas, this is The Will Cain Show. Welcome to the brand new Will Cain Show studios from Dallas, Texas. I hope you'll forgive my excitement. I'm a little bit like a kid in a candy store. But I've had a vision. We have had a vision for this show from the very beginning. And it wasn't staring down the barrel of one camera talking to you on a daily basis. It was a way to interact, move around, be real. And that's the point, to establish a relationship with you that's real. That's how we want to do TV. Let me give you a tour around. We're going to have studio guests live right here in Dallas, seated at this table. The details, the craftsmanship in this studio are unparalleled. A little star, a Texas star, made out of lava from Hawaii. A little hat tip to my past. Look at the lighting. Everywhere you go, beautiful details in this studio. And it's not just the aesthetics, it's the technology. 300 inches of monitors. Not just to tell you the news, but to show you the news, for us together to interact and to learn, and to have a good time when we know what's going on in our world. Although we left that old studio behind, we brought along the controversial mic. We're never going to forget who we are and how we started. And that's part of my story, sports, so we bring along with us with a ball from Tony Romo. And speaking of technology, when we can't have guests in studio, we're going to bring them live via remote right here to the table of The Will Cain Show. Now, this was a big project, a long time in the making. For the guys that worked on it, they would say, not that long. We did this in a record time. Take a look at the start to finish of how this office turned into a television studio. From engineering to lighting to carpentry to design to the executives. This thing was an awesome project of everybody's involvement, and I am eternally grateful and excited to now be doing this show here with you in the new show studios for The Will Cain Show.
On this podcast, I will do a sit-down interview with Will Cain right here where we're actually sitting at his set for my show. We really appreciate him doing that. Before we get into that, though, I want to do this. I want to talk about due process. Due process is interesting because everybody's talking about it these days, and I'm 58 years old. I've always taken an interest in government. I've read the Constitution several times, and I understand the concept of due process, but most people, generally speaking, don't talk about it much. In fact, they probably don't mention it at all unless they're in trouble with the law and they say, hey, what about my due process? So let's break it down a little bit. What does it mean? Where does it appear? Why are we talking about it? Well, the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution talks about due process. By the way, we're talking about it right now because the Trump administration is deporting legally, I believe, people who are here illegally, especially those that are in groups or gangs that they have called terrorist organizations like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. In fact, Tren de Aragua, an invading force from Venezuela, according to the administration, can be deported just goodbye. Have a nice day. No due process. So is that fair? Is that legal? Is that constitutional? Here's what the Constitution says about due process in the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Okay, so that's the federal government due process. When it comes to the 14th Amendment due process, which was added after the Civil War, it says this: it guarantees fair procedures when states act to deprive someone of life, liberty, or property. States. So in other words, if you break it down very simply, the Fifth Amendment applies to the federal government. The 14th Amendment applies to the state governments. So they're not the same, although they do a similar job. The Fifth Amendment is probably the one that would deal with illegal aliens or illegal immigration because by the Constitution, processes or information regarding naturalization will go through the central government. That's the federal government. So the Fifth Amendment is the one that we're probably talking about here. The 14th Amendment doesn't apply. That applies individually to states. ICE or DHS are not acting on the state's behalf. They're acting on the federal government's behalf. So do you have to give due process to people that are here illegally? Yes and no, but yes for this reason. If you're arrested having crossed the border illegally, if the charge is 8 U.S.C. 1325, which is a misdemeanor crime for coming across the border illegally, you will then get a hearing on that charge. Nothing more, nothing less, no full-blown due process by the states. This is a federal issue. The federal government says you broke the law, they prove it, and you can say goodbye. Also, 8 U.S.C. 1326, that's a felony if you've been deported already, came back across the border illegally. Why is that important? Because it raises the level of crime to a felony level, which could mean prison time before you're deported. So what is due process when it comes to an illegal alien? The due process, if the person who crossed the border illegally, violating one of those two statutes that I just mentioned, would be to say, well, I'd like to have asylum. Now, if there's an asylum claim, you go in front of an immigration judge, and that judge says, yes, I will grant you asylum, or no, I won't grant you asylum. Most times, over 90%, some say as high as 94% of the time, the people requesting asylum do not get asylum. That means they have had their due process. They've had their day in court. You're here illegally, and we do not give you asylum, you're going to be deported. That's the level of it. You don't have to have a jury trial, have your family members come up and talk about what a great dad you are, or what a wonderful pillar of the community you are, or that your grandma's really nice. None of that matters. What matters is you broke the law. How do you plead to that law? Well, I'm going to claim asylum. So not guilty by reason of asylum, and then an actual immigration judge gets to decide. Now let's get into a specific case. This guy, Abrego Garcia, who is down in El Salvador, which is his home country. He was here illegally, came here in 2011 or 2012, illegally, crossed the border illegally, violated the law. Then he was caught in Tennessee, going from Texas to Maryland with a carload of people. Now, they allege that he was human trafficking. And then the sheriff in Maryland, once he got on the case, he alleges that this guy's a member of MS-13. So now that we know all that, and he goes in front of a judge, he then decides in 2019 to say, well, I claim asylum. Well, the asylum judge on the district level said, no, we believe you're MS-13 according to an undercover informant who says so. And then they take it to the next level. The appellate judge, also an immigration judge, says, no asylum for you. I believe you're a member of MS-13. According to this undercover informant who says so, we believe them to be credible. That's it. He claimed asylum. He was denied asylum twice. And then he was given a final order of deportation. Well, what does that mean? You're in the country illegally. You're not getting asylum. You're alleged to have committed a bunch of crimes, but we're not going to even go through those processes. There's no reason for us to take you to court, go through all these different levels of scrutiny when we have decided you cannot stay here. No asylum for you. That's it. He got his due process. For some reason in 19, that judge also said, but we'll withhold removal to El Salvador, just that country, because allegedly there was a rival gang to this guy's gang that would have caused him harm had you sent him back to El Salvador. Fast forward to 2025 is when the Trump administration deported him. That gang is gone. MS-13, which he's a member of, according to the judges, is a violent terrorist organization, as is Nicaragua. If you're in this country and you're a terrorist, you don't get the same due process as other people. In other words, if he were not an MS-13, he would have more due process than he's able to get because he is MS-13. Now, they did not quash that order before deporting him. That's where some people say the mistake was made. The administrative error was made. So they can do a couple of things. Well, three things. One, leave him in El Salvador, which is where he's a citizen, and he's from there. Don't bring him back here illegally. Two, bring him back for about 5 minutes, quash the order, send him back to El Salvador, or ask El Salvador to deport him to a different country. He is not allowed to come here. He will never be a resident of this country. He has no chance to do that. He's not coming back, and yes, he got full due process. Now, if there are any confusing, notions in your mind about that, if you want to contend that, well, he really didn't, he deserves this, that, and the other, you can leave a comment. Leave a comment, let me know. Make sure you like this video. Make sure that you check out all of the Unshaken and Unafraid podcast with Joe Pags. We're going to keep on bringing it to you like we've been bringing it. This is what we like to do. We like to bring you information that is straight down the middle and to tell you the truth. Now, am I a conservative guy? You bet. Do I lean to the right? Absolutely. But there's a reason I lean to the right, because I checked out what the left believes, and I don't believe in it. But I will always give you the facts. The Fifth and the 14th Amendments are different, but similar. The Fifth Amendment is what we're talking about here when it comes to illegal aliens being deported, and hopefully you have a better understanding of exactly how it works. Again, make sure you leave me some sort of a note. Make sure you let me know what you think about all this. The reason why we're talking about it is because the left, for some reason, in this country, doesn't like Trump, doesn't like conservative people, doesn't like you and me, and they, for some reason, think that gives them the ability to complain about every single decision that's being made. It doesn't make sense. There are some things we should be able to agree on, like at the State of the Union address, when there was the young boy, 12, 13 years old, who wants to be a police officer who's had brain surgery. You couldn't stand up and clap for that guy, really? You couldn't do that? You couldn't stand up and clap for the family of Lake and Riley? Really? You couldn't do that? See, it's confusing to me, because when the left makes a good decision, I will tell you. When the right makes a bad decision, I'll tell you. In fact, as I'm doing this recording, I posted today, or last night, that I would not be for any new taxes on anybody. The reason I tweeted that, the reason I posted it, whatever we're calling it on X now, is because there have been some rumblings, some rumors, that the president is considering raising taxes on the top income makers. And I'm saying no. Why would you raise the tax on anybody? To make the left happy? They're never going to be happy with you. To raise revenue? Well, you raise revenue by lowering taxes historically, like he did the first time in 2017. You lower taxes, more revenue is now spent into the economy booms, you have more brick and mortar, you have more research and development, you have more employment for Americans, which is really what we want. So I am not for raising taxes. Otherwise, I'm on the right, man. I'm conservative. I believe in a conservative value system that works for my family, for me, and my community. Now, conversely, I agree with Obama on a few things. One, if you're a CEO of a company that borrowed money from the taxpayers, cap your CEO pay at $500,000 a year until you pay it back. I thought that was a good policy. I agreed with him on sending 3 million illegal aliens back. He was affectionately known as the deporter-in-chief. I agreed with him about getting Osama bin Laden. That made sense to me. Of course you would go and get Osama bin Laden. Why? Because I'm a conservative and I disagreed with 99% of what he did, would I disagree with getting the top terrorist that did 9/11? See, on the right, I believe that we have the ability to say, I agree with you on that, although in general, on basic other things, I disagree with you. We can be agreeable when we agree. For some reason, the left will argue for a guy who has now been twice adjudicated as being a member of a terrorist organization, MS-13. A guy who twice, his wife alleged that he beat her and brought domestic violence. In fact, she had temporary restraining order against the guy for a while. A guy who was pulled over under suspicion of human smuggling and human trafficking. Why does the left want that guy in your neighborhood? The left knows that the right position to have is that he's a bad guy, and I'm glad he's out of here. The left knows that. But instead of actually saying that, because it somehow, in their minds, will give a win to President Trump, they would rather argue, complain, and pretend it's not good. Like new jobs. American-born people, workers, have seen an increase in jobs by hundreds of thousands under this current administration. The left can't say, you know what, that's good. I disagree with them on this other stuff, but that's really good. I like that more Americans are working. That makes sense to me. They just can't bring... Eggs are down. Energy is down. The cost of living is down. Gas prices are down. Can the left say, hey, that's a good thing? I disagree with them on this other stuff, but that's a good thing that he brought those things down because it helps people in my constituency. They just can't bring themselves to say it. So I'm going to be a guy, and I've been this guy since I was 10, since I remember paying attention to all sorts of stuff political. I'm always going to be the guy that says, I agree with that side because they're right. I disagree with that side because they're wrong. It's not right versus left politically. It's correct versus incorrect when it comes to me. And I hope that through this podcast series, Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags, you'll learn that that's the right way to go. And that doesn't mean you have to agree with me. If you think the other side is right, stay with them, although I'd like to have that argument. Okay, now let's go on set with Will Cain. This is his brand new program on Fox News Channel, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Will also does a podcast every morning. I think it's at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So go check that out, too. It's on syndicated radio stations. Plus, you can get it wherever you get your podcast. But again, Here we are on set in Dallas, Texas. This set, it still smelled like construction was going on. That's how new it was. So let's get with it now. Sitting on set with Will Cain from Fox News Channel. I'm glad you stopped by. Welcome to the next episode of Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. I'm here with Will Cain on his brand new set in Dallas, Texas. It was part of the deal, Will, that you're from the Dallas area. You want me to do it, I'm going to do it in Dallas. Or was that already in the works? How does that work?
I can't believe how many people ask me that question as though I have some big negotiating muscle to flex on Fox. I wish I had that story to tell. I'll do it, but only from Texas.
Right.
No, I am so grateful, Joe. Yeah. When this whole thing came down, which was roughly last December, and I got a call from Suzanne Scott, the president of Fox News, saying, hey, we'd like you to do the Will Cain show, and we want you to do it from Dallas.
Love it.
I almost fell out of my seat. I almost fell down. And then I had to just do my best not to say, deal. We had to figure a deal out afterwards.
Think about it, right? Let me think about it, Suzanne.
But it's a dream come true.
Well, it's got to be. Now, do you have a pickup truck?
I do.
You have Bella Hay in the back?
No, I'm an urban air hauler in my truck. My bed is air? Yeah, my bed is mostly empty, but I do drive an F-150. I did have to put more masculine tires on it. It is lifted and leveled, but it's an urban cowboy truck.
Tell me about who you are, where you came from. Sherman, Texas. You say about 20 miles north of us. So is that not Oklahoma? It's almost, right?
We were getting along so famously, and then you did that.
Oh, sorry. We'll cut that out.
Sherman, Texas is 60 miles north of Dallas, which puts me even closer to Oklahoma, spitting distance in Oklahoma from Oklahoma, which, they say animosity is the product of proximity. So in other words, there's no hatred greater than neighbors. And I grew up where if you went into the bathroom at the bar, the graffiti on the stall said the Border Patrol's on the wrong river.
Oh, wow.
I am
That's awesome.
Definitely Texan. And you know what, Joe? I've grown to actually not just appreciate and respect, but really like Oklahoma. Okay. Oklahoma's
kissing up a little bit now.
I'm not even kissing up. Here's my great big thing, Joe. My life, I think if you said, Will, if you and when you step into money, what will you buy? I will never buy a sports car.
Okay.
I'm not going to buy a beach home. I want a ranch.
Nice.
And it's been land in Oklahoma is markedly cheaper.
Are you serious?
No, not serious yet. But land in Oklahoma is markedly cheaper in Texas. And I've been toying with that idea. Could I go and get a ranch in Oklahoma?
Red River rivalry or Red River shootout?
Well, I grew up with the shootout.
It's got to be the shootout, right?
And then they changed it over and over.
Nobody
I don't even
thought
know.
We were shooting each other. Will, come on.
And by the way, say Red River rivalry three times quickly. Yeah, I think I just threw an extra letter there. Right.
So it's got to be the Red River shootout. So were you always a sports guy? Did you always love sport? You were just talking hockey during one of the breaks in the middle of your show. So are you a guy who's like all Dallas sports? Let's go. Those are my teams.
No doubt about it. I've always loved sports. Yeah. And if I were being honest with you, so I grew up, Joe, and the two big influences in your life are always your parents.
Yes. And
my dad was a small town plaintiff's attorney in Sherman. And I probably never felt a greater sense of pride than when I sat in his office and watched him talk to clients, or on the rare occasion got to go to the courtroom and watch him argue. And that informs a lot of who I am and what I do. And then my mom was a news junkie. And I remember sitting at the breakfast table every day, and she would watch the Today Show. And I'd look up at the Today Show with a great amount of, esteem for whoever it was on the television set. Matt Lauer. By virtue of being on TV, we granted them respect. And I thought then that I would want to be a sports broadcaster. I've always loved sports, both to play and to just watch and cheer on. Yeah. And I do believe, I have very strict rules, Joe. You are born into your teams. You are born by geography, with one small caveat. So I'm from here, so I will root for the Dallas Stars, the Texas Rangers, the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Texas Longhorns, where I went to law school. But if your dad brainwashes you into some other team, that counts as a sufficient level of indoctrination. And I did that for my sons who were born in New York City. So they cheer for the same teams.
Well, good. Well, God bless you for that. Now, I was born in Long Island, New York. So the Yankees, my baseball team. Been in San Antonio 20 years. The Spurs are my basketball team. And the Dolphins, that's my NFL team, because I 21 years in South Florida.
Okay.
That's why I lost the New York accent. But for me, let me ask you this. I don't watch football because Colin Kaepernick 9 years ago screwed it up. Do you watch it? Can you put that aside? Because that guy, he was benched, Will. Let's be honest. He wasn't really this activist. He was benched, and he was mad.
Right.
So he sat down the first week for the national anthem, and then suddenly he started kneeling, and then he got national attention because of it. I can't bring myself to watch every Sunday My daughter Sam is here with us. Every Sunday, 2, 3, 4 games if I could catch them. I had the Sunday ticket and all that.
Right.
Are you watching NFL? Are you back at it? Did you ever stop?
I never stopped. And during Kaepernick's protest, I was working for ESPN.
Okay.
And watching sports was part of my job, which is a pretty wonderful thing to make your job.
Oh, yeah.
But I was knee deep, obviously neck deep in those debates. I was on First Take with Stephen A. Smith having debates about what it meant to kneel for the American flag and the American anthem. And I was very unpopular with a large segment of that audience. But we both know that I was much more popular with the broad swath of Americans.
Of course. Yeah. We were mad.
But I was never going to let Colin Kaepernick ruin not just something that I love. You know, I lived in New York long enough to know how much you guys love sports. Yeah. And you love baseball, and particularly in a way that we don't necessarily down here. People love baseball. Yeah. But football is to us as baseball is to New York.
Absolutely.
It's part of our culture. It's how we're raised. I grew up going to the Friday night football game long before I was in high school because the whole community went to the game. I love the regional rivalries of college football. I love Texas versus Texas A&M. And I love sitting around at Thanksgiving arguing with all my family members about Baylor versus A&M versus OU versus Texas. And I love the Dallas Cowboys and always have. I remember the first time I cried, Joe. It was 1981.
Okay.
First time I cried over sports.
I'm trying to think about what happened in 81 with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know.
NFC Championship game.
Oh, was that the San Francisco 49ers?
Joe Montana rolls out with Ed Too Tall Jones barreling down on him, throws up a prayer. Dwight Clark raises up above Everson Walls and pulls down the winning touchdown. And I argued as a 6-year-old, he's got stickum on his gloves. He's got stickum on his gloves to make that catch.
And the thing is, you have had to suffer for all these years, 4 years later. We're still seeing that freaking highlight, right? I mean, every single NFL show, they're going to show that. The reason why I started coming back is that Kaepernick, he actually turned the audience against him. When he said no to showing up to a full-blown workout, the NFL gave in. They said, all right, all 16 teams will take a look, or all whatever teams there are now, we'll go take a look. And then he said, I'm not going to do it there. I'm going to do it over here. I'm going to have my PR people going to be over here. And finally, the NFL said, forget it. And when John Elway came up and said, we offered him a contract, Colin doesn't want to play football. Then I realized that I let him take my joy away long enough. So I started watching a little bit. I'm not back to where I was. I'm more of a basketball guy, to be honest with you. I don't want to get too deep into this because you might never invite me back. But how do you trade Luka Doncic? I have to assume Nico Harrison's going to be out of a job. No, the ownership might be great. I don't know the owners. I know Mark Cuban, but he's not the majority owner anymore. How do you do that? How do you not read the room? There are murals in this city where we're sitting right now to Luka Doncic as if he died.
Yeah.
I mean, they love this guy.
I do love the ownership group. The Adelson family. Sheldon Adelson was a longtime Republican donor, big conservative. His wife, Miriam, is as well. They support not just national politics, but things that happen places like the state of Texas as well. And they've been very charitable as well to great causes. And so I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I mean, trading Luka Doncic is trading away Babe Ruth. And I don't care how much that sounds like an overstatement. This guy is generational.
Yes.
These guys come along once every 2 to 3 decades. And he is beloved in this city. And I hope he still loves us back. And I would love a situation where he ever returned. But no one's over it.
Right.
No one here is over it.
Right.
We're brokenhearted that we lost Luka.
And what do you do about it other than, because you're hearing Nico Harrison quietly, and again, I'm going to blame him. I think that he probably twists some arms and said, listen, I've got the experience in this. And he literally recently said, I didn't realize the fan base would react this way.
Which is insane.
How can you not know that?
Which is insane.
But then he started calling him fat. He had a bad work ethic. None of that's true. The guy was like a staple of the community. He's buying a $15 million mansion the day that he gets traded.
Right.
What you know what I mean?
Here's my theory. Nico Harrison comes from the Lakers world, Nike world, Lakers world, great friends with Kobe Bryant.
Right.
That's his connection to the Lakers and to Nike is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was a grade A grinder, hard worker, sun up, sundown. The stories are legendary about Kobe Bryant. Luka is not Kobe.
Right.
But I don't care, as one of my friends said once, if Luka Doncic is smoking a Marlboro Red, eating a Big Mac while dribbling the ball up the court. He's Luka Doncic. So I don't care if he doesn't have Kobe's workout ethic, but Nico clearly did. And he systematically fired everybody around Luka. His own trainers, his own circle of people.
Right.
He began to ostracize Luka until he got to the point where he could now trade Luka. I don't know why Nico had such dislike for Luka. I think the ownership followed their management. I don't think they were incredibly invested in the knowledge of running a basketball team.
Right. Well, you give it to somebody that you think has the knowledge.
They're hoteliers, they're casinos magnates. They're very invested in what's going on in Israel. And I think that Nico was given a leash, and this is the leash he ran with. And I want to put a button on one thing you brought up.
Yeah.
Kaepernick's a fraud. Kaepernick is a fraud. And it's not simply that he turned down those workouts. He called the NFL a plantation. He called the owners like slave owners. And while he did that, he kept begging for a chance to play in the NFL.
Right.
You don't beg for your opportunity to get back on the plantation.
As he was enjoying his option, his last paycheck was $14 million a year or something.
Right.
How is that a slave or a plantation or a slave? It was for me. I don't want to make this about me, but it wasn't really about him. It was about the NFL could have told him stop it. And they didn't. And that bothered me. They didn't care about you and me, the consumer. They cared more about his so-called free speech rights, which, of course, we don't have a free speech right. You can't show up tomorrow and wear Bermuda shorts and a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses and keep your job.
That's right.
So the employer has the right to say, this is what the protocol is.
Well,
and he could have gone outside afterwards and said,
I think they did, though, eventually, Joe, in that.
Well, Jerry Jones did. And he did it right, I think.
And they did cumulatively in that he no longer had a job in very quick order. And then there comes the controversy.
Yeah.
And sports is like anything else in life. It's a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
And 32 individual owners made independent decisions to say, you know what, the headache and the nick to marketing and what this is going to do to my fan base is not worth what amounts to a backup quarterback.
And it was a racist move, although the league is 75% black, which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's Will Cain, his brand new show, Will Cain, every single day, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Don't miss a second of it. It's amazing to be able to hang out here in the studio. You're a lawyer.
I am.
Have you ever used it? No, I know that you have to use the contemplative ability a lawyer has in what you do, but have you used it in the courtroom?
Never. I went to law school at the University of Texas. After the University of Texas, I thought, you know what, I would really like to be a lawyer. As I mentioned, my dad was a lawyer. But at that time, Joe, it felt a little bit like settling for a double, and I wanted to see if I could hit a home run.
Gotcha.
For what that meant for me at the time is I did want to be in media.
Double's still pretty good. I mean,
know.
Was it scary to make that decision?
And not only is a double good, a single is good.
Yeah.
And over time, I've learned the wisdom of the accumulation of singles.
Yeah,
that not
absolutely.
Everything in life has to reach for the fences, but I was young and I wanted to. And so I moved to Montana. I worked on a ranch. I wrote a book. In that time, I decided I want to be in media, but that meant for me on the business side. So I bought newspapers outside of Dallas, rolled them up. I sold them to a conglomerate. Then I started a Latino media company, growing market. And I started that. And that one did not succeed. The newspaper venture was a success. The Latino.
Were you writing it in English? That could have been the problem.
It was in English. It was.
Well, there you go.
And I'll tell you the details because you'll get a kick out of it. When I was growing up in North Texas, as you mentioned, dangerously close to Oklahoma, we didn't have a large Latino population. We do now.
Yeah.
The entire state of Texas does. My wife is from Lubbock, Texas, and she grew up around the Hispanic community. And she came, and you'll know this as someone who lives in San Antonio, she taught me about the quinceañera. Yeah. A quinceañera is a big coming-of-age event, 15-year-old girls, that resembles a wedding. And I was getting married about that time. My wife would bring home these magazines and look at these websites to plan her wedding. I was like, these things are incredible businesses. So I modeled this as a quinceañera media company off of the wedding company. Yeah. Wasn't bad. Tight niche, didn't survive the 2009, 2010 recession. I had success, I had failure, and I decided at that point I want to do something I'm passionate about every day. I've always been passionate, and I'll be real with you, Joe, in the audience. I would never describe my passion as politics. My passion. Mine
either. Right. Go ahead.
My passion is ideas.
Yes.
And it sounds haughty to say philosophy, but it is the ideas and culture that bind us together, that we debate and defend what it is to be an American.
Right.
And law school put me on that path. And I never practiced. My dad died when I was living in Montana. I came home. I helped wind up his law practice. I never was in the courtroom. I am a licensed attorney. But to your point, I use it every day on the Will Cain Show. It taught me how to organize my thoughts why I believe what I believe.
I love what you said about it not being a political thing, because I don't think you and I are on sides. I think that we believe in a value system. And if the people coming at us are in that value system and agree with it, then we're going to agree. If they're not, we're going to disagree. I saw you do an interview with Peter Navarro, friend of mine, friend of yours, good guy. We like him. But you pushed him on something because he deserved to be pushed on something, and he gave you a nice answer. I think people get stuck on the political side, and I've got to do exactly what that side says, or else I'm going to be on the outs. I got to be honest, and I think you're the same way. I don't care if somebody on X doesn't like my take on something. It doesn't bother me. In fact, it might engage, what I'm saying even better. I'm not a lawyer. My mom says I would have been a good one, but I get it. The way you use your brain and the way that you work through these issues is so easy to understand for the layperson watching who doesn't do what we do for a living. And I think that's a real gift. I really do. When your show hit, and I knew you from Fox and Friends, and I knew you actually from ESPN, I think that I really became aware of how cool you were and how smart you were when you argued against women's soccer players making the same money as men's soccer players, which is just a dumb concept when the men are making $1 billion and the women are making $35 million or something stupid. But I could see how contemplative you were about exactly what take you were going to have. And you made it so easy for anybody on any level to understand. You're not using lofty words. You're not saying, look how smart I am, although you are. And I think that's why the audience is resonating. When you first started this show, well, we're sitting in this beautiful new set in Dallas. 4 million viewers the first day, something like that. 2.8, 3 million a day now, consistently.
Yeah,
you couldn't imagine that.
No, I couldn't, and I'm incredibly flattered.
And again,
and
I think you have the goods.
Well, thank you, man.
But that's a number that's holy mackerel.
Well, and I don't want to give faux humility. I mean, I'm very proud of that. But I'm also humbled and grateful about it, that it's happening. And you know, I also don't take it for granted. There may be times when our numbers aren't as strong, and I am trying to do something different. And I'm grateful to Fox and the executives that was my marching orders. Will, we want you to be different.
Nice.
We want this to look different. We want you to sound different.
I walked onto the set today. I was like, you guys want me to just walk in front of the camera? Okay.
Yeah. And we want you to pick topics that are different.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. And you said some very kind words for me, and I hope everything you said is true, because I am not blessed with a beautiful voice like Joe Pags.
Oh, well, thank you.
I have to find my
anything else.
I have to make my hay somewhere else. But I learned something, and I think you'll appreciate this, and I think you're the same. Being smart is of only limited currency.
Yes.
People don't connect to intelligence. You want to have a smart point of view to share with them, but I will say this to your audience and to mine. I'm not always going to be right.
Yeah.
I'm going to get it wrong. But we are awash in information right now. We are awash. We've never had more access to information.
It's crazy.
And yet we have less wisdom than at any point I can imagine in history.
Right, because people pick sides immediately.
And not just that, because you're surrounded by lies and propaganda and falsehoods and agendas. And so what I promise to the audience and what I want to try to do is be real and be authentic. And what I believe, I'm being real with you about what I believe. My biases are up front.
Yeah.
You should know them.
Yes.
And then I'll bring on people that have different points of view, and we'll see where the cream rises, which top is filled. And if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. If I get it right, I get it right. But my currency with you will be that I will be real.
I love that you said that, because people like you and I don't have a problem saying, hey, I got that wrong yesterday. Let me tell you what the real story is. What I hate is when somebody says, well, Will Cain's just a conservative. That's all he cares about. As if you didn't do the work to find out what the liberals think.
Right.
You and I examine both sides, and we have to say, I don't like that side, and here's why. And we can explain it on any level. And this is why my value system is on this side. You're right. You're not a Republican host on Fox News Channel. You're a guy who has examined everything in the ether, and you've made the decision on where you and your family come down. And I love that about the show, and I love that you're doing it. Will Cain is the guy on his set. I don't even know why I get to be on his set. I'll be honest with you. It's actually kind of odd to me. I get to sit here with the man that just had me on his program very graciously. I want to talk quickly about the soccer stuff, because I think that's really when you did blow up. And we have actually a nice connection with Stephen A. Smith. In 2007, 2008, I was on, quite frankly, with Stephen A. Smith quite a few times.
Yeah.
Arguing all this race stuff and black power in the middle of what was it? It was actually when the Indiana Pacers, I believe, were in Detroit and had that dust up in the stands.
Yeah, Malice in the Palace.
Right, the Malice in the Palace. I was there saying, no, you don't do that in the middle of a game.
Yeah.
Whereas they were going, well, you got to defend yourself. You have to do this
really?
and that. Yeah, and then it got into, I said, why didn't Muhammad Ali, hold his fist up and say black power in the middle of a ring? He did that outside of the ring. Do it elsewhere if you've got some message that you want to give. So our connection with sports and all that, I think, is kind of intertwined. But I've got to ask you about the soccer stuff, because it was so stupid. I mean, legitimate. I don't want to just say stupid for the reason of saying stupid. It just was dumb.
Right.
That the women were trying to say, well, we're trying to present to the audience, we play the same game, we're just as good as they are, the revenue is the same, therefore why aren't we getting paid the same? And you very calmly and very easily educated me and everybody watching, that's not the case, man.
Right.
The guys' game is the biggest game on the planet. The women's game, nobody cares right now. Maybe you can make them care, but when you did that, is there ever any trepidation in your mind before you sit down and say, I'm going to tell the truth, and half the audience is going to hate what I'm about to say?
No, never enters.
But you spelled it out better than I ever heard.
Well, thank you for that. No, it never enters my mind. The interesting thing about that moment is, and I don't know if you saw that live or if it hit your...
I think I saw the video later.
Your TikTok feed, where you're killing it on TikTok. You're getting to
well.
a million followers on TikTok.
I'll give you some tips.
I need the tips. It's fascinating to me that blew up. Like, it's about a year ago that blew up on TikTok, and it's probably a 5-year-old moment.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know if there's something about that moment or the way I explained it or whoever edited it and made it incredible for social media purposes, but it was easy, Joe. Look, I have not ever prioritized being popular.
Right.
I have prioritized telling the truth. And the soccer thing was easy, to your point.
Really
It's
easy.
a matter of economics.
But nobody was saying it.
No,
They
because
were afraid to say it because then they'd be a misogynist.
that's exactly right. And look, you can take sex out of it and you could say, hey, the world's number one dart player, whoever he is, I don't know, he dominates. You know, he's
Right,
great. Maybe
right.
whoever he is has dominated for 10 years. Why doesn't he make the same as LeBron James?
Right.
And the answer is because the market for audiences on darts isn't the same
Right.
for the market for watching NBA.
Right.
And that's the same as it is for women's soccer versus men's soccer. It doesn't matter how good the U.S. women are. It doesn't matter. And by the way, that can lead us into conversations about how good are you, because you talk about you're as good as the men. You lost to the 15-year-old U15 teams at FC Dallas.
Right.
But you're good for women. You're good for women. The unfortunate thing for you is fewer people care.
It used to be the
Fewer
reality.
people watch women's soccer.
Reality would win the day. Serena Williams on some late night show, might have been Letterman, might have been somebody else, whoever she was on with, was confronted with, why are the women not making as much as the men in tennis? And
She told the truth, didn't she?
Oh, yeah, she did. She said the last ranked guy on the planet would slaughter Venus and me.
Right.
It's a different game. It's not even close. That's what I like. I interviewed Becky Hammond once at the station in San Antonio, and she's 5'6", a pretty young woman, 160 pounds. And I said in the interview, because they were giving her a hard time that she was playing for the Russian team for some reason. She couldn't get on the American Olympic team, and she went and played for Russia. Who knows why? Long story short, she said, I could never, ever, ever, never play in the NBA. Shaq is 7'1", 340.
Right.
What am I going to do? And that was such a calming wave of normalcy from somebody who was at the top of her game, a perennial all-star, somebody who's now a coach and probably will be the first female coach in the NBA at some point. What happened to that, do you think? Common sense seems to be... You and I talked about Jasmine Crockett today on the show.
Right.
What happened to common sense, logic, reason, and normalcy?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that. And by the way, this debate that you're highlighting about the difference between men and women is relevant today in that we're still stuck in this trans debate that defies common sense.
So dumb.
That a man couldn't step into the women's world and dominate, and of course we know that he can.
Right.
And the biggest problem with that, and the left's response is always, well, how often does it happen? Well, the answer is, if it happens once, then it's too much.
Absolutely.
Because it defies not just common sense, but reality. And if you force the American people to not just divorce themselves from common sense, but to live in a false reality, hey, man, now all bets are off. We're a ship, we have a sail, but we have no rudder. You could sail us into any port if we are completely divorced from reality.
When Martina Navratilova is not on your side, and she's openly LGBTQ, she has been forever. When Caitlyn Jenner, friend of mine, is not on your side, there's a problem there. I literally asked Caitlyn Jenner, how would you have done the heptathlon in 1976? And the former Bruce Jenner said, come on, that's kind of dumb. I won the decathlon. I said, exactly. And those entities don't seem to matter. You have to say it's okay because inclusivity. Doesn't matter that you broke somebody's eye socket with a soccer ball. It doesn't matter that you slammed somebody to the ground on the basketball court. All of that is such a mess. But I think that you showing Jasmine Crockett being so absolutely ridiculous on the case will actually enlighten people, and they'll start to speak out more and more. I know you got to go. You got a lot going on, and I really love that you give me this time. It's Will Cain on his set here in Dallas of the Will Cain Show, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday on Fox News Channel. What does the future look like? I know that you're focused on this. Yeah, and by the way, I know that you're a family man, and I want to bring up your family. I know that there's sort of like my wife is in the background. Your wife is very, very supportive and probably keeps the house. And she works way harder than I do, Will, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what's the goal? What do you end up doing? Do you take over Fox News? Do you take over? Are you going to be the biggest media mogul on the earth? Because right now, you are so extremely in the right wheelhouse. But things always expand, and there's always something else that we look toward the future. I know you do a great show every day, but what is the next step, do you think?
You said a lot there in that this is how I am built. I will think of what's next, and I will have those aspirations, ambitious sitting out there. I am focused, to your point, on making this show right now the best possible version of itself and hope the ratings follow.
It's so good. So good.
And I would honestly say to you, while I appreciate that compliment, we're in our infancy. Okay. Like, what I want this to be is still a process right now, and it will be even more different than what the viewer traditionally sees on Fox News. But I have 2 shows. That's the new promo that's coming out on Fox News.
Nice.
1 man, 2 shows. The other show is a digital show that is syndicated on radio and podcast. And I encourage your listeners, hopefully, to subscribe on Spotify or Apple. That's the Will Cain Show, which streams live every day at 11 a.m. I intend to build that as well. Very large, both shows. But you ask an interesting question. What is on the horizon outside of that? And I don't know, Joe.
That's kind of a cool place to be, though.
And maybe the answer is governor of Texas.
Dude, we just broke news right here. Will Cain, maybe governor of Texas someday. Will, thanks a million, brother.
Thank you so much, Joe.
I really, really appreciate you having us up today.
No, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show.
Glad to have you on Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags. I'll have another episode for you soon.